Hi, my name is Aminat Sanni-Kamal. I am an author, I'm a writer, I'm an editor. I love to write stories, tell stories, create stories. That basically sums up me. That's me, yes. And a big thank you to OkadaBooks for having my new book, Amber Fire, published by Love Africa Press, on your platform. When it comes to writing fantasy and romance, I like to create stories that spark joy, that inspires happiness, that inspires laughter for my audience. Because for me, those are the kinds of things that I love to read. Those are the kind of stories that I love to read, that I love to watch. And that is also what I like to give my audience. A better way to explain it is the feeling that I get from reading these books. I also want my readers to feel that way when they read my own book. Real life is already tough and challenging enough. So my stories kind of create a way for people to escape the realities of real life. When it comes to feminism, like I said, like I said earlier, writing stories that inspire joy and sparks laughter is my main goal. But then, growing up as a woman in our society, as a young girl in our society, there were and are so many things that I wasn't comfortable with as a person. Like, you can't be a Nigerian or you can't be a woman in this world, in this part of the world, and be completely comfortable with the way things are. I'm trying as much as possible to be subtle. So I try to put little elements of feminism and gender equality in my stories. I like to create um, strong women, not strong women in the sense of long suffering women, no, we already see that enough in our society. I like to create strong women, strong female characters that can stand on their own in spite of or despite their vulnerabilities or their flaws, because every human being has flaws, and so should fictional characters as well. It's what makes it interesting, it's what makes it relatable to people. So I try as much as possible to just put in just bits there, here and there, without making it too um, exhausting or too consuming. You know how there's already this stereotype that Nigerian literature is about trauma, is about struggle. So I try as much as possible to pass my message without making it traumatizing. And it's actually quite funny because when I started writing, I used to think or used to believe that the only way I could write or the only way I could be acknowledged as an author is if I write stories with deep themes and, strong themes that are about like our trauma and these struggles we face as Nigerians, as Africans. And I found that too traumatizing for me to write. It has actually really been quite an exciting and amazing journey for me, quite an interesting journey, because the founder, owner, I don't know what the appropriate word is, of Love Africa Press is actually one of those writers that inspired me to write African Nigerian love stories, to tell love stories through the eyes of an African. I remember searching on Google randomly because I was like, I mean, we should have people, apart from the type of stories that we grew up reading, we should have Nigerians who write like this as well, not just the Western American literature that we were exposed to, that I was exposed to. So I remember I first searched Black romance writer, and I found Beverly Jenkins. She writes Black historical romance. I was like, oh yeah, cool, cool. And then I searched for that. I decided to limit my search, or fine tune my keyword, and I typed in Nigerian romance writer, and Kirutai came up. I was so excited, and since that day, I've always wanted to work with her, sort of. So I started reading her books. I think I interviewed her once when I still used to actively blog. I interviewed her, and she's very receptive, very encouraging. Let me use that word. So I've always known that I would love to work with her. I don't think she had started Love Africa Press then. So it was just when I found out, I was like, I would want my stories. I definitely want my stories to be a part of the Love Africa Press family. And it took a while. It took a while to the way writing is. It took a while, but finally it happened, and we have Amber Fire. So yes, it's been an exciting and wonderful journey for me because I also got to work with an editor who understands romance. There's a difference between working with editors who just know the basic grammar rules, punctuation rules, and all of that, and then working with an editor that understands the genre you write in. Like, it really was an amazing journey for me. It was enlightening. I was happy when she pointed out some things. You need to work on this. You need to do this. I was really happy with what the editor did on Amber Fire. It was fantastic. It shows when you work with professionals, it always shows. So, yeah, it really was an amazing and exciting journey for me. Yes, my love for K dramas. Hey, I don't even know where to start from when it comes to that. So, I've talked about how I always want my stories to spark and inspire joy and laughter in the minds or in the hearts of my readers. And K drama does that for me. I love watching Korean dramas. I mean, I love watching beautiful people do silly things, I think, do silly things on screen. But apart from that, they have a way of telling their stories. There really is no in between when it comes to Korean dramas. They can really go really silly and you just be laughing, like, what is this? And they can really tell deep stories that would have you crying, like weeping in the middle of the night, and you're asking yourself, I mean, it's just a story. So I always just it has been a thing for me, or a better way to put it is, there's been a dream for me to be able to tell stories that would, just inspire the kind of feeling I get from watching Korean dramas, like the happiness, the depth, it's just a whole. I don't know how to explain this to only K drama watchers who are also writers will understand. There's this wholesomeness that comes with it, and I just want my readers to be able to experience that. So I just infuse a little bit of that feeling, not necessarily their stories, because their stories are unique to them, and African stories are unique to us as Africans. So I just like to infuse just a little bit of the feeling, the emotions that I think that I'm getting from watching their dramas. I like to just put that into my stories, and I hope I'm doing a good job. I hope my readers are feeling my stories. Let me put it that way. So when it comes to my biggest influences in writing, I will not really say that I have a biggest or the biggest influences in writing, because my friends actually say I'm a weird person. I don't have a favorite color, a favorite food. I just like things. So in a way, I can't really say that I have biggest influences, or also, like, but I do have people that I look up to that I can say, yes, they've really done well for us, and I've made people like us believe that we can do what we're doing. They've made the African literature scene, um, they paved the way. Yes, they paved the way for writers like us to proudly do what we do. And that would be Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. That's one. There's Kiritai that I just mentioned. There's also um, why did I just forget her name? Anyway, I've forgotten her name. So let's move on from that. Yeah, that's the thing with me. Like, I don't really, when I want to say something, if I don't say it immediately, it just flies off my head. So I'm someone who grew up listening to my grandmother's stories. My grandmother is an amazing beautiful storyteller. So I grew up listening to her stories, talking about the folklore, tortoise and the old mischievous adventures of tortoise and his wife and the animal kingdom, and also telling stories about gods and deities and stuff. So in a way, that kind of inspired me, or as I grew up around stories. Let me just put it that way. I grew up around stories. We watch movies a lot in my house. My grandmother tells stories, so it was kind of inevitable that I would be drawn to telling African stories. And also, there's also the fact that as teenagers, many of us grew up reading American literature. It wasn't until in secondary school when we wanted to write WAEC that we had to start reading Nigerian literature. I mean, that was when I first encountered Chimamanda, when we read Purple Hibiscus, I think, yes. And since then, I've always wanted to tell beautiful African stories, being influenced as a child by my grandmother's stories, being influenced by the things that I see around me, by um, our mythology and all of that. It just kind of just came to form like a it just became a whole lot of it became a grand, yes, a grand source of inspiration for me. So if it's African, then definitely I can draw inspiration. So when it comes to having a creative process, my creative process is very scattered, very scattered. For someone who has to be organized, my creative process is very scattered. I don't know how to explain it. Now, writing is a very tedious job. It's a very tedious passion to have. It's not just something that, oh, I love writing. Yes, at some point, writing will stress you. God, you would sit down and ask yourself, who sent me message? Why am I doing this? So when it comes to my creative process, I just like to do what my mind feels like doing at the moment. So most times, what is just constant is that I like to organize. Now, this did not become a constant thing in my life until like a couple of um, years ago, a couple of years back. Because before, I just open my laptop and just start writing. I don't outline. Um, I don't do anything. I just start writing. I just allow the story to flow and take me whatever direction that it would take me. But now, as I have grown older and there's so many, there are more responsibilities, more things I have to attend to, my mind is always just working. Like if I don't write something down or say something or do something immediately, I'll forget. So what has now become constant for me now is to try and organize my thoughts. I try to organize my thoughts, put them down. At least as the ideas come to me, I just put it down. I may come back to it another time. I mean, that's why I said I'm very scattered. I just put my thoughts, I put it down. I make sure I write it or I record it. Just put it down so that whenever I come back to it, I would remember that, okay, this is what I was thinking about. This is the direction that I want to go. But most times, because most times if I don't put it down like that, I'll forget. And even after putting it down, I may even forget completely about the story. I'll just be randomly searching through my phone, the note app on my phone, or a document on my laptop, and I'm like, oh, there's this story idea that you had, okay, and I put it down. When it comes to the writing process, there's this thing I do. I have to mentally bully myself into writing because I do other things, and when you do other things, writing for your own self can feel like it's secondary sometimes. So I have to bully my mind into writing. Once I already have the story that I want to write, I organize it, and I do not allow other stories to derail me. I just bully myself. Like I said, I just tell myself, if it's somebody else's work, if you're being paid, if this is a ghostwriting project, you would have finished it since. So why are you doing this to yourself? So what I do is I give myself, like, I set timelines and deadlines for myself. So I can say, okay, you know what? You have to finish the first 10 chapters of this story within so and so date. So I'll do that, and it works. Most of the time, it works. And yeah, so that's it. Like I said, my creative process is very scattered because sometimes this works for me, sometimes it doesn't. What I just try to do is that I make sure that I don't let an idea run away from me. So when an idea comes, I put it down. When I need to write and I know that I need, because one thing I've learned in this writing journey is that yes, you can be passionate about a story, but passion is not going to see you through the end of the work. It's not going to. What's going to see you through to the end is discipline and consistency. That's why I said I bully myself. I'm like you. I force myself. Some days I just sit in front of my laptop. I open it. I'm like, if you don't write, you're not going to stand up from here. So that's how I kind of help myself to stay creative and get the work done. I hope this makes sense too, because this is just me. This question is very funny, and it's funny because when I first saw it, it just reminded me that I have to go and update my Amazon author profile because I'm sure that's where you got this question from. So yes, I am a lawyer. Technically, literally, um, I'm a lawyer. I studied law for 5 years and I went to law school and I was called to the Nigerian bar. But that is where it ends. That's where this whole law thing ends. I am a writer. That is who I am. That is what I do. I don't think I would have even made a very good lawyer. But then there's actually nothing I can't do if I put my set my mind to it. But law is not really my thing. So it just ends as me being a lawyer on paper. I do not practice law. I am a writer. And being a writer, I'm an editor as well. I work as an editor 9 to 5, so it's remote for a publishing company. And I run my own side business, a freelancing, writing, and editing business. Now, combining all that is not easy. I would tell you the truth. It's not easy because running a business in Nigeria test you, will put the fear of God in your life, especially when you have to deal with clients who want to write but know nothing about writing. They need the services of a writer, but they don't want to pay the writer. You hear things like, it's not just writing, it's just editing. I did a good job. And then they don't want to, all these things when they say it's because they don't want to pay you for your services and navigating all that without losing your customers and you know all of that, it's quite challenging. And also having to write my own stories, having to create my own stories. That's why I said my creative process is quite scattered. I most times have to bully myself into finishing a project, completing a project. Now one thing I'm just grateful to God for is that getting stories is not really a challenge for me. Like stories come to me easily, like because I draw stories from anything. It can be from one line of a book that I read, or from someone just talking, from one word, or listening to music, or watching a Korean drama. And I'm like, not even from the drama completely, just one thing, maybe the cat in the drama or something. So stories come to me easily. I don't have that problem. That's one thing I'm grateful to God for. So it's just getting to do the work while doing other things, having other responsibilities. Yes, it's just a thing of creating balance. And sometimes the balance, it tilts, the scale tilts, but you just have to keep doing what you do, to be honest, because this is Nigeria and you have to work hard, especially if you don't have any funding or backing anywhere. And we know how being an indie author in Nigeria is, it's a lot of money, time, effort, energy. So it's just all about finding the balance and trying to keep the balance. Sometimes you just have to compensate when the balance tilts. So I hope that makes sense. I'm sure it does make sense to some people. At least it makes sense to me. So my thoughts on self-publishing. Well, first thing is that I actually love self-publishing. The only problem with self-publishing is that if you don't have money and if you don't have time, if you don't have um, I don't know what this word is. But if you don't have money, if you don't have time, if you are not dedicated towards it, you will you will fall short. You will not achieve your goals. You will not achieve your dreams. Because for self publishing, you get to control things. You can control time your book will be published. You can control the editing process. You can control so many things. You are in absolute control. So that can make you spiral. That can make you not see things the way you should see it. That can make you not I don't know how to explain it, but that control for me is beautiful because it allows me to grow, to learn. One thing I always tell people is that you will always learn from your first book. I don't write as that. Your first book will always teach you a lesson. Whether that lesson is good or is bad, you will always learn from it. So if you're self-publishing, you get to learn that lesson bit by bit, and then you get better with your next book. When you publish one, you realize one mistake that you made when you published it, and make sure that you don't make that mistake in when you publish the second one. So yes, I actually do love self-publishing because it allows me to grow, it allows me to learn, it allows me to network with other people. But the problem there, like I mentioned, is that if you don't have money, you won't be able to push your book as much as you should. If you don't network properly, you won't be able to push your book as much as you should. And really, most people don't want to read independently published books or self-published books. They want to read internationally acclaimed books and all of that. So those are some of the challenges that we face. And it's also why I'm kind of grateful to Okada Books because when I published my first book, a very short story, If the World Was Different, I first published it on Smashwords. And then I found Okada Books. I was like, oh, I can publish this in Nigeria and make it accessible to Nigerians to read. And I did a very easy process. So Okada Books actually makes the process of publishing easy for self-published authors. It makes it easy, makes our books accessible to other people, to Nigerians who want to read, and it's such a beautiful and amazing thing that Okada Books is doing. At least for me, it encouraged me to continue to publish more, knowing that there's a platform that I can put my book on and people can easily find them and read them. So when I started back then, it was just it really encouraged me. And like I said, I've learned my lessons from my first book. Though it's still the way it was when I published it, it's still that same way. I kind of like to look back on it to it as look at where you started from and look at where you are now. So yes, thank you. Thank you, Okada Books, for being there for writers like me. Bye.